Hello, and welcome back to the Gardner Show.
The M. Gardner Show. The M. Gardner Show. The M. Gardner Show. The M. Gardner Show. The M. Gardner Show. The M. Gardner Show. The M. Gardner Show. The M. Gardner Show. The M. Gardner Show.
I'm your host, M. Gardner. I'm a novelist, a lifelong lover of stories, and whether you're new here or you've been with me since the beginning, welcome back to my campfire. Behind every great story is a deeper question. Today, we're going to start with one. It's simple on the surface, but the more you sit with it, the bigger it gets. Here it is. If myths never disappeared, what do they look like today? So pull up a chair and let's begin at the very beginning. When people hear the word myth, they picture something ancient. They jump straight to Zeus hurling thunderbolts from Olympus, Odin sacrificing his eye at the Well of Wisdom, Hercules competing against 12 laborers, King Arthur pulling the sword from the stone, dragons' quests, prophecies carved in stone. Ancient stories, ancient beliefs, ancient worlds. And underneath it all is that assumption so widely shared by most people that nobody's even noticed it. Those things are over. We grew up, we got science, we got rational. Our thought became coherent. We figured out how lightning works. We stopped needing Zeus to explain it. Myths are closed. That chapter is gone. Me, I don't buy it. I genuinely believe that humanity has never stopped making myths. Not for a single generation. Not for a single decade. We just stopped calling them myths. We started calling them blockbusters. We started calling them franchises. We tucked it under some different category like they were something fundamentally new. But the architecture underneath, the emotional bones holding it all together, those don't change at all. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Before we go any further, I think we need to be sure that we're using the same definition. Because myth is a word that people use loosely. In casual conversation, myth usually just means something false, misconception, an error. That's a myth. But that's not what scholars mean when they say they study mythology. And that's not what I mean here. In the academic sense, a myth is a story that culture tells itself to explain the world, assign meaning, and transmit values across generations. That's the core of it. A myth doesn't have to be proverbial truth or proverbial falseness. It has to be functional. It has to be something that people will carry forever. That great comparative mythologist, Joseph Campbell, if you've ever heard of A Hero's Journey, you're already encountered his work, spent an entire career learning from myths from hundreds of cultures across the globe. His landmark book, A Hero with a Thousand Faces, published in 1949, argued something radical for its time. That all of these myths across different civilizations, spread by thousands of miles and thousands of years, were telling the same story he called the monomyth. A pattern goes something like this. A hero lives in an ordinary world. Something disrupts that world and calls the hero to adventure. He resists. They cross the threshold into an unknown world and face trials, find allies, confront a great enemy, and therein are transformed, and then they return, bringing something back that benefits the whole community. Campbell described it in this way. A hero's venture from the world of common day into the region of supernatural wonder, fabulous forces are encountered and discovered, and deceived. Victory is won, and a hero comes back with the power to bestow something of value on others. You can map that template in Odysseus, onto Moses, onto the Buddha, onto Beowulf. And here's what Campbell understood about what people miss. The reason all of these myths share the same structure, because they're all answering the same question, questions that don't always just go away just because we build a better telescope. What is good and evil? What does it mean to sacrifice something? What happens after we die? What gives life meaning? Who are we supposed to become? How did we live with loss? Those are the same questions your great great grandparents wrestled with. They are the same questions you wrestle with tonight. And they are the same questions every story worth telling has been wrestling with since the very first campfire. Let's make this concrete. Let's talk about Superman. Superman first appeared in Action Comics #1 in 1938. He was created by two teenagers from Cleveland, Jerry Siegel and Joe Schreider, and he is something remarkable. Siegel himself described him as Samson, Hercules, all of the other strongmen that I've ever heard of rolled into one. He wasn't hiding it. The creators themselves understood they were tapping into something ancient. So how different is Superman from Hercules really? Both are born with extraordinary abilities that set them apart from ordinary people at birth. Both are expected to use those abilities in service of others, not for personal gain, but to carry divine exceptional nature while living amongst ordinary humans. Hercules was the son of Zeus, a god raised as a mortal. Superman was sent from Krypton, a kind of heaven world that no longer exists, to live with Earth with a human family. Both embodied the highest values of their culture. Hercules represented Greek values of strength, courage, and cunning. Superman represented American values of truth, justice, and selflessness and service. And perhaps most striking, both have survived long past anyone who first told their story. Scholars at the University of Leeds have noticed that Disney's 1997 Hercules film reconstructed the original Greek myth so closely along the Superman template that Hercules, like Superman, is sent from a supernatural world to be raised in a human couple on a farm. And as the movie dwells into the city, he fights a powerful arch nemesis. The DNA runs both directions now. The ancient myth is shaped by the modern one, and the modern one is released back into the ancient one. Superman isn't alone. Wonder Woman is especially drawn from Amazonian warriors and Greek mythology. Consequently, it is not a metaphor. Thor, the literal Norse god translated into Marvel Comics, Batman follows the archetype of the Avenger who descends into darkness only to confront it. It echoes every figure who has journeyed through the underworld to face the shadow. The scholar and Batman film producer Michael Olson has argued formally that superhero characters consult modern American mythology. When you look at fiction, they serve by explaining values, externalizing our fears, and giving our figures something to project ourselves onto. It's very hard to argue with him. Let's take this one step further, because I know you guys think Star Wars is the most remarkable case study of mythology that's ever existed. Let's see what George Lucas has confirmed in multiple interviews. And that is when building Star Wars in 1970, he deliberately used Joseph Campbell's work, direct scaffolding. He was an admirer of a hero with 1,000 faces. He leaned on it occasionally, and Joseph Campbell's Foundation has documented Lucas as using Campbell's framework as a direct reference to the creation of the story. But what I find most fascinating is why Lucas felt he needed to do this. Lucas repeatedly felt that young people in the 1970s had lost their connection with meaningful stories. The myths and fairy tales previous generations had used to make sense of growing up. Fascinating fears and understanding who they are and they were supposed to become. Campbell's research gave him a map for how to rebuild that. And it worked. Look at the structure of Luke Skywalker. It starts as an ordinary world, a desert farm on Tatooine, about a humble origin, about as humble as an origin as you can imagine. He receives a call to adventure through a message from a princess. He refused at first. He finds the mentor in Obi-Wan Kenobi. The wise elder institutes the hero but cannot complete the journey for him. So he starts it, but he can't complete it. He faces trials, gathers allies, confronts the dark side of the Force, and ultimately transformed from a naive farm boy into someone capable of changing that fate, the fate of everything. That is the monomyth step by step. That's what Joseph Campbell is arguing in A Hero of a Thousand Faces. But what makes Star Wars mythology significantly not just well-crafted story, but a familiar structure, is the spiritual layer. The Force functions almost extraordinary like a religious concept. It is everywhere. It connects all living things. It has a light side, it has a dark side. It requires discipline, surrender, faith. The Jedi Order, with the Council of Training Codes of Conducts and Messianic lifestyle, closely resembles religious orders. The young hero is asked to trust someone he cannot and may not be able to see or prove. And then there's Darth Vader, the fallen hero, the student who chose power over service, who fell from grace through pride and fear. He is the cautionary figure, the shadow vision of what Luke could become, the story of the one who fell and yet might be redeemable. That is older than any written language. When Campbell finally watched the original trilogy, and this is a real story confirmed by Lucas biographers, he was deeply moved and immediately understood that what Lucas was trying to accomplish. The two became close. Their recorded conversations at Skywalker Ranch were later released to the public. Campbell realized what he was watching: mythology actively functioning in the modern world. That's not mythology as a metaphor. That's mythology as a literal function. I want to pause to give credit to someone who doesn't get mentioned enough in these conversations. Roland Barthes, French literary theologist, philosopher, essayist, and mid-1950s, he began writing a series of short stories of French literary journal, later collected in a book published in 1957 called Mythology. What Barthes argued, and generally provocated at his time, is that myths weren't relics from the ancient world. Myths were being manufactured all around us every day, embedded in ordinary objects, cultures, rituals, and modern life. He analyzed professional wrestling as a myth. He analyzed soap detergent advertising as a myth. He analyzed the Tour de France as a myth. What he was doing was pulling back the curtain on how modern culture naturalizes its values, how it makes choices and constructs ideals to feel like an inevitable fact of nature, rather than things someone decided. His definition was precise. Myths are not just stories. Myths are ideals that became universally adapted, that stop being questioned. So they shift and adapt across societies when retaining their core function to give culture a shared framework and understanding of reality. Barthes was doing what we're doing right now, looking at popular culture and saying, this is not shallow entertainment, this is myth-making in real time. And many people are doing it without even knowing it. I mean, you could be doing it on a daily basis. That matters. Most storytellers of the past, the people who told stories around campfires, just like we are now, even though it's a proverbial campfire, it counts. The people who commissioned the recording of the Odyssey, those who carved the myth in stone, they weren't thinking, I'm creating mythology for the ages. They weren't. They were doing what they felt necessary. And then the myths emerged from genuine human need. That is happening right now, and that is huge. Here's something that separates modern mythology from ancient mythology in a crucial way. You know, a story about Thor might appear in a poetic edda, a visual carving, and ritual recitement, but fundamentally, the same story moved through different forms. Modern mythology works differently. What scholars call transmedia storytelling, the deliberate construction of story that unfolds across multiple platforms and media formats, is a new technology from mythmaking. And Marvel Cinematic Universe is the most sophisticated example of this that has ever been created. Think about it. The MCU isn't a series of films. It's a cosmos. Characters introduced in Iron Man in 2008 have storylines that expand across film, television, Disney Plus shows, comics. The mythology is woven so tightly that you can watch characters arc across years of connected media and events of Avengers Endgames. They reverberate across Loki, Wakanda Vision, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. The story is continuing and it's living and it's breathing mythology today. What transmedia storytelling enables is something ancient mythologers could never fully achieve. It is the ability to explore the cosmos from multiple angles simultaneously, following different heroes with different perspectives on the same events. This is the literary equivalent of a 360-degree view. Scholar Henry Jenkins, who coined the term transmedia storytelling, argues that the approach creates kind of a participatory culture. Audiences aren't just passive consumers. They actively reconstruct the mythology across platforms. They're disputing interpretations, filling in gaps, creating fan work that expand the universe even further. The MCU fans don't just watch the films. They're co-creating the mythology through the engagement. That's different from how the ancient myths were experienced. But it's actually closer approximation of how myths' fundamental and oral cultures where the storytellers and the audiences were in constant dialogue, and the story shifted based on what the community needed. Now the scale is different, but the function is the same. And here's what makes it genuinely mythological. The MCU has given a generation of people shared cosmos to navigate. It's given them a language for thinking about heroism, sacrifice, power, responsibility, and the means to be a part of something larger than yourself. That's what myths do. The anthropologist Victor Turner spent his career studying a ritual performance in human culture. He argued that certain cultural events, sporting competition, festivals, ceremonial gatherings, function as what he called luminality. Moments when competitive steps outside of normal time and enters a sacred space where normal rules of society don't quite apply. Think about that. When you walk into a stadium for a game, something changes. The crowd no longer separates in as individuals going about their days. It unfurls as a body. Singing together represents their events together, breaking as one big organism. That feels different. That shakes. It feels elevated. Ordinary human conflict, the group against one another, takes on a mythic proportion. And the narrative that sports generate are generally mythological. The underdog that raises to victory against all odds, the veteran that plays for the fighting one in championships, the injured athlete returning to prove that he's still the strongest, the rookie debut, and they all still change everything. All of them. It changes everything. The bitter rivals forced to work together. That's a fall from grace and a redemption arc, all into one. These are the same stories we've been telling for thousands of years. Sports historian Alan Gutterman documented how modern professional sports consistently adapted and adapt the language of rituals and narrative structures of ancient athletic competitions, particularly the Olympic Games of ancient Greece. The torch rally, the opening ceremony, the emphasis on the ideal human body, the narrative of nations competition, the idea that victory is sacred, that losing carries shame, and that athletes' excellence reflect something about the virtues of your people. Ancient and modern separate by 2,500 years using almost the same language. But here's what I find most striking. Millions of people invest genuine, emotional energy in sporting events. They paint their bodies team colors. They travel distant cities to witness the game in person. They organize their entire year around the playoff seasons. They pass team loyalty down from generations as a part of their family identity. And by an anthropological definition, that behavior of people engaged in sacred practice, the athletes become heroes, the stadiums become temples, the coach becomes the sage dispelling wisdom, the rival team becomes the shadow, the embodiment of what we must defeat. Sports don't just tell myths, sports are myths. They are rituals through which communities affirm their values and identities. If you don't believe me, I know I'm a week late, but look at what's going on with the World Cup. Scotland went crazy in America. They brought the myth of their people to life, and it was beautiful and it was amazing. Thank you, Scotland, so much. Now I want to explore something that seems strange, the mythology of brands. When I say you might think that's cynical marketing, that's manipulation, that's exactly what Barthes was warning about. And you're not wrong. But it's also interesting. A brand is simple. Nike swoosh, Apple's apple, McDonald's golden arches. Those aren't just logos. Those are icons that trigger entire associative networks in our brain. But more than that, brands construct narratives. They tell stories about who you are if you wear their shoes, if you drink their cola, or if you use their phone. Nike tells the story of an athlete's within. Apple tells the story of a creative genius. Harley Davidson tells the story of an outlaw rebel. Those aren't accidental. Those are deliberately constructed mythologies. Marketing theorist Mark Lipton has argued that most successful brands function as a modern mythology, creating what he calls brand myths, the archetypical narratives that consumers buy into literally and figuratively. Their consumers isn't just purchasing the product, they're purchasing an identity, a story, a place in mythology in their systems. This gets at something deeper about how identity works in modern culture. In ancient cultures, your identity often assigned at birth. You were born in a castle, a tribe, a social role. Your mythology was given to you. In modern cultures, we're told that we get to choose our identity. We construct it ourselves through choices we make. But of one primary way we construct this identity is through consumption. The brands we buy, the stories we align ourselves to, the mythologies we participate in. So, the mythology of brands, in a strange way, is the mythology of self of modern capitalism. That's not inherently evil. We've always used external symbols, clothing, weapons, talismans, to express our identity. The difference is scale and sophistication. Ancient warriors might have worn specific markings to show that the tribe that they belong to. Modern consumers wear Nikes to signal which mythology identity they've chosen. The function is almost the same. But here's the crucial difference that Barthes was pointing out in ancient mythologies. The audience understood that they were myths explicitly formed as stories. In modern consumer culture, the mythology is designed as functional advertising. Nike isn't selling a story, they're selling truth that anyone who's determined can be an athlete. Except that is a story, and a powerful one. Now let's go somewhere that might surprise you. And I want to be careful here because it's easy to misread the point. I'm not here to tell you that specific conspiracy theory is true or false. That's not what this is about. What I'm here to explore is structure, because when you look at the structure of popular conspiracy theories, you find something remarkable. They follow the same template as myths. I promise I'm going somewhere with this. Psychologist Karl Popper, who helped bring the term conspiracy theory into academic usage in the 1950s, actually described them as secularization of religious superstition. His argument was that the people gravitate towards conspiracy theorists the same way for the same psychological reasons they gravitate towards myths and need to explain the world, to find patterns, to feel that the events aren't random. Modern psychology has backed this up. Peer-reviewed research has found belief in conspiracy theories is stronger in people who have a heightened drive to find patterns in environments. This is the same cognitive function that made myths essential throughout human history. We are pattern-seeking animals, and that is not a flaw. It is what we are. Now, look at the structural parallel. Ancient myths typically say the world is not what it appears to be. Hidden forces are at work: gods, demons, cosmic powers, shaping events that look random from the outside. A select few have come across to a deeper truth, and untitled masses live in uncomfortable blindness. Conspiracy theorists say the same thing in modern language. Powerful hidden forces are shaping events behind the curtain. A small group of people, researchers, insiders, people willing to dig, have broken through the real story. Everyone else is living in a manufactured ignorance. The structure is almost identical. Let me give you specific examples for documented ancient mythology and the Prometheus story. Prometheus was a titan, one of the ancient gods who predated the Olympians. According to Hesiod and Asclepius, when Zeus withheld fire from humanity, Prometheus stole it back and delivered it to mankind in a hollowed fennel stick. The punishment was severe. Chained to a rock, Caucasus mountains, with eagles eating his and permanently regenerating his liver every day for eternity, until Hercules eventually freed him. But what's the story actually about? Asclepius, Prometheus bound, Prometheus made it explicit. He gave them sense, reason, the arts, capacity to build, to think, to progress. He gave them knowledge, and a powerful being deliberately withheld it from them. That's the structure and narrative and the core of countless modern conspiracy theories. The powerful are hoarding something: the technology, the cure, the truth. And few brave individuals are paying the price to expose it. Both create villains, forces of deliberate malevolence responsible for human beings suffering. Both create heroes, people willing to question, to investigate, to refuse the comfortable lie. Both offer hidden knowledge and secret theories, and the comforting idea that was pulled back the curtain, the chaos would finally make sense. Here's why I think conspiracy theories diverge from modern mythology, and this may be most important observation of the whole episode. In mythology, discovering the truth is not the ending, it is the beginning. The revelation of what's really happening, what really caused the hero to action, is the inciting incident, not the resolution. Many conspiracy theories stop at the revelation. The climax is, I know the truth and you don't. The possession of hidden knowledge becomes the destination rather than the departure point. There is rarely a hero who takes truth into the world and actually changes something about it. Structurally, that's a gap. And as a storyteller, I find it one of the most profound gaps there is. The myth doesn't end when the curtain is pulled back. The myth begins there. Writer's Corner. Time to pull back my curtain on what I'm working on this week. This episode has made me look at my novel with fresh eyes. In Anrith, The Tale of a Bear and His Gun, the book I'm currently working on to get published, one of many, there is structural changes that I keep running into in earlier drafts. As I'm writing, Bear is discovering the truth as if it were his destination. He finds out what's really happening at Anrith, and the story exhales like it's done. But it's not done. That's exactly when the story has to start demanding things from him. The revelation isn't a reward. The revelation is responsibility. Once I reframed it that way, the second half of the book had shape and weight it was missing before. Bear knew the truth was making every choice, and at this point, it carried a real moral stake. If he stayed ignorant, nothing he did would be his fault. But now he knows. So what does he do? I also realized something while writing this episode. Bear isn't just a character. He's a myth. He embodies values. Loyalty, sacrifice, protection of the vulnerable. And like all myths, he should reflect something true about the world, even if the specifics are fantastical. The same applies to the other characters I'm working on. Hoyt in Gods, Aliens, and Onion Rings. He's not just a person. He's an archetype, a weary warrior, the one who's already paid the price, the one who's at stakes. In Epic of El is the Threshold Guardian, the character who stands between ordinary and a mythic world. When I started thinking about my characters as myths rather than just realistic characters, the depths they changed. The depths of them changed, and what they could carry changed. I started asking what truth characters were telling, what universal human experience they were expressing, what fear, what hope, what did they emphasize. That's the difference between a character and a myth. The writing changed once you think of them as a myth. So, your writing challenge for this week, or my writing challenge, however you want to look at it. Look at your main character. Ask yourself, what myth are they? What archetype do they embody? And are they a hero? Are they a mentor? Are they a shadow? Are they a herald? Or are they a trickster? And more importantly, what universal truth is that character trying to communicate? If you can answer that question, your character stops becoming a collection of traits and becomes more mythological. Something that resonates at a level deeper than realism. Find that mythic core, write from it, see what happens. Okay, let me bring this home. The oldest stories we have, the Epic of Gilgamesh from the ancient Mesopotamia, the Iliad from the Odyssey, the Vedas from ancient India, these weren't writings as literature for its own sake. They were working documents from the existence of being alive. How to face death, how to love, how to handle power, how to fail and get up again. Books extended to reach out from these stories. Film gave us a new body. Television gave them a living root. The internet gave every person on Earth the library of every myth ever told and the ability to create and spread new ones at real time, just like we're doing it now. We don't outgrow mythology. We scaled it. Every generation gets myths as they need it. The ancient Greeks needed stories about their ordered chaos because building a civilization and trying to understand what it meant to live alongside other people with compelling powers. The medieval world needed stories of knights and quests and models for courage and desire, war and collapse of empires. The 20th century gave us superheroes. During the Great Depression, World War II, impossible champions rising to protect the vulnerable, precisely when ordinary people felt most powerless. What does our generation need? I think it needs stories about people who discover that things are not as they seem. We need to discover and act in any way without certainty, without the answers of knowing the truth and what cost might come of them. We need myths that show us how to hold complexity and how to stay curious without becoming paranoid. We need questions without dissolving, how to ask in the world that doesn't come with a clear instruction. Good stories have always done that. They are still doing that. We just don't always recognize them as myths. But they are. Behind every great story is a deeper question. And maybe the deepest question of all is this: what story does your generation need? I'll leave you with this from Joseph Campbell in The Power of Myth. Mythology is not a lie. Mythology is poetry. Mythology is metaphorical. It has been well said that mythology is the penultimate truth. Penultimate because ultimate cannot be put into words. Ultimate cannot be put into words. But story, myths, get closer than anything ever has. I hope my story this week didn't bore you. If you have any questions, please email me at m.gartnerbooks@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for pulling up a chair around my campfire. Keep questioning, keep telling stories, keep creating. And I'll see you next time on The M. Gartner Show.